This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 321. We are your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my Ice Planet Hoth coffee. There's really not a lot of nice weather on Hoth. There's not a lot of nice weather in Illinois these days either. But if you want to escape the weather and get to a warmer place, maybe, I don't know, the Disney theme parks like Disneyland or Walt Disney World, be sure to go to MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. They are the place to go. They can help you with the best prices, let you know about discounts, and proactively adjust your bookings when the rate goes down. And best of all, it is a free, no cost, no obligation quote. I certainly use them for everything on Coffee with Kenobi, and I highly recommend if you're considering a Disney World vacation or Disneyland that you look them up. You can go to our affiliate link, which can be found on social media or at the top of our webpage to find out more. And please let them know that Dan Z and Coffee with Kenobi sent you. They show Jeff McGee and Matt Moore of the Star Wars Splash page. Join me as we take another look at The Rise of Skywalker. It's been out for a while now. I don't even think it's in most theaters anymore, so it's pretty much nearing at the end of its theatrical run. So we've had a little bit of time to think about some concepts and things that happen in this film. And to be honest, there's still a few things that are not sitting really well with me. And the best way for me to process that is to talk with all of you, and Matt and Jeff are going to help us to kind of break things down from The Rise of Skywalker as far as some key points that I want to explore a little bit further. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Joining me today for a cup of coffee are the hosts of the Star Wars Splash page. First, let's bring in Matt Moore.
Hello, everybody.
Well, thank you for coming back to the show, good sir. How's life treating you?
I have no complaints. I'm doing okay for an old guy.
An old guy? You're a spring chicken.
I wish. my spring done sprung.
Oh, well, I don't know how to transition from that to our next guest. But I'm sure he has something in mind. That is, of course, the other host of the Star Wars Splash page, and, you know, our little buddy, Jeff McGee.
At the risk of being predictable, it's not so much the years as it is the mileage with this crew, I think.
Is that Jeff's way of saying that he's going to be cast in Indiana Jones #5?
I think so. I mean, we've been waiting for this moment for a while, so it's good that we're doing it.
I already own the fedora, so, you know, it makes sense.
It's just you're practically there.
That was really the deciding factor.
And you have the swagger.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, speaking of swagger, but not really, let's talk about The Rise of Skywalker. It's been out for over a month and a half. Pretty close. And now I'm pretty sure, gentlemen, that it's not in theaters anymore. So I believe it has ended its theatrical run. There may be some theaters here and there that are still showing it. But as far as I can tell, it's done in theaters. Does that sound right?
I believe it's actually even fallen out of the top 10. So, yeah.
I think it is. There's a couple of theaters in and around me in between Philly and Trenton, New Jersey that have it still. I may go hit it again this week.
Okay. How many times have you both seen it so far?
I've seen it 3 times now.
Okay. And what about you, Jeff?
Same for me. I've seen it 3 times. I saw it opening night in regular 2D. Then I went and saw it in IMAX 3D the next day. And then the following weekend, I went to see it in D-Box, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. I've never seen anything in D-Box before.
It's a lot of fun. My next goal, I was hoping to get to see it in like a 4DX because we have a couple of theaters that do something similar to that around here, but just didn't time out right.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, plus, life
right.
can get in the way. So what I'm going to do, I've seen it 4 times still. I haven't seen it since we did our big review show. We really haven't talked about this show since the last review show, which is kind of crazy, but there have been premieres and The Mandalorian and lots of other events going on. We did some live events, but now we need to circle back. I think we've had a lot of time for a lot of points in The Rise of Skywalker to sort of settle. And so I'm going to bring up, I've got, I believe, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I've got about 7 points that I want to bring up, and I want to hear your guys' takes. And I'm I mean, I've made no secret of it on other shows and online. While I like The Rise of Skywalker, I do not love it. In fact, if I were to rate all of the Star Wars movies, I think this might be the lowest one for me. And again, that's I know that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it just there's some things in here that I am just sort of struggling with. But I think it's okay. Again, as we always say, critical thinking, intellectual honesty are great things. Certainly okay to disagree, but we're not going to be disagreeable because that's not what we do on this show, and that's not what the two of you do either. So we have a lot of things, I think, to break down that give us a lot of material. But Matt, when we do these, we'll just have you go first, Matt, and then Jeff, just so it's easier. But
Age
Matt,
before beauty makes sense.
Well, there you go. Matt, as time has gone on, how have your feelings for the Rise of Skywalker sort of evolved?
They have. This is surprising for me because Rise of Skywalker has had it's been a diametrically opposite effect than when I saw The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. Each time that I watched the movie, I found more little things to sort of nitpick and that would also sort of needle at me afterward as I was thinking about it. So while I still enjoyed seeing it each time, my joy was dampened each time afterward. And that sounds kind of odd. It's just that the more I watched, the more I realized, well, that could have been an opportunity, or this was a missed opportunity, or what do you mean Poe was a spice runner? What? So,
right. Which we're definitely going to talk about. I think that's a good way to put it. Like, I like it, but every time I go, I don't leave thinking, oh, I liked it a little bit better. I liked it a little bit better. Or I saw this more. But it sort of has the opposite effect. It has less impact on me. Now, what about you, Jeff?
And, it's been very similar to Matt's experience, maybe with a little less pronounced, because when I left the film the first time, I would say I was whelmed. Not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed, just whelmed. And I think a lot of that had to do with the expectation I had going in, because I had really, thankfully, done a good job of tempering my own expectations. And each time I watched it, aside from the fact that each one was a completely different experience, 2D, then 3D, then D-Box, I felt like I was seeing the same movie every single time. And I didn't necessarily enjoy it less each time, but it's interesting. Overall, I had less of a reaction to it, but individual moments hit me harder. For instance, Chewie's reaction to finding out that Leia was gone, Leia's actual death, and Kylo Ren talking to Han Solo. Those initial individual moments hit me harder in a good way. But again, overall, kind of like you guys said, each time it kind of made me less enthused about going back to it again.
Yeah,
felt more like homework each time.
Sure. No, I think that's a pretty apt comparison as well. The moments, like you said, that hit really resonate. I mean, the Chewie one is the most powerful, I think, in the entire film. I think the last 10 minutes are perfect. I've always felt that way. And there's certain things that I like that wrapped up. This is also my favorite Adam Driver performance and my favorite experience with Kylo Ren on the big screen for sure. But there's some other things that don't work for me. So I'm going to start bringing up these points, and I want to see kind of where you two are at on them. And I'm curious to see what everyone else in the Coffee with Kenobi family, what do you all think about this one as well? So the first one I'm going to bring up, Matt, is Rey's lineage. And I'll hold my comments until both you and Jeff kind of weigh in. But tell me where you sit on Rey's lineage.
I am still mixed on that. I get I love the notion that she adopted the Skywalker mantle because of the connection she felt with not just Luke, but also Leia. But yet, at the same time, the more I think about it, and the more I, read what other people have to say or discuss with them their feelings and their opinions, I do see the logic in the claims that her agency was taken away. We saw her in The Force Awakens as Rey Nobody, And here she did, over the course of 3 films, made herself into a somebody, and then adopted the name of the name of the people who helped her transform. Although underlying everything was the fact that she is the one who transformed herself. So it's still a very, very fine line for me. Part of me would have really loved to have seen that end scene, where she looked over and saw Luke and Leia, the Force Ghost, and just said, "I'm Rey," in the movie, or Rey, just Rey.
I would be very much at peace with that as well. Jeff, what about you?
Matt stole my answer.
He kind of stole mine too. It's beautifully said.
It did. My favorite moment in The Last Jedi, not my favorite scene. My favorite scene was the throne room battle. But my favorite moment was when Rey found out that her parents were nobody. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I thought it was a very brave move on the part of Rian Johnson, and like Matt said, I thought it really it made it so that the Force was for everyone. Your lineage didn't so much matter. It just mattered your connection to the Force. And my initial reaction to finding out that she was Uncle Palpy's granddaughter, first off, I just kind of thought it was dumb. The idea of a granddaughter. I don't know why, but it just took me out of the film. And it never has sat right with me. I can overlook it. It's not ruinous, but I never liked it. I much preferred the idea that this person, this strong figure, male, female, whatever, but this strong female figure was her own person, just like Matt was saying. And I feel like I don't think it necessarily took her agency away. I get where she was going with it, and I get why she decided to take on the name Skywalker, because she obviously wanted to leave the name Palpatine behind. But I would have much preferred to hear her say Rey who, just Rey. But otherwise they couldn't have called the movie The Rise of Skywalker. But I have to agree. I feel like I think it was a misstep. And I've said before that this, and I think I can't remember. I think it was Corey Club on the roundtable that we did said this felt like a sequel to a movie we never got, and that's exactly it.
Yeah.
This felt very disconnected from anything that had come before, and that was a big part of it, because it literally came from out of nowhere.
Yeah, when I saw this for the first time and it was revealed that she was a Palpatine, I actually groaned. Like, I audibly groaned, like, ugh. Because I just felt like you both said, I mean, look, it's no secret that we all love The Last Jedi. I mean, if to me, if not for Canto Bight dragging on as much as it did, I could easily see The Last Jedi as being my favorite Star Wars film.
Agreed.
Maybe. You know what I mean? It's just, It's perfection. It's incredibly smart. It's profound. And what it sets up in the beginning of the film, it wraps up at the end of the film. And I like the mystery. I like the ambiguity. Star Wars is best when there's a little bit of ambiguity, but we also get some resolution as well. We didn't get either in this movie, I don't think. And I wanted Rey to just be Rey. I mean, whether she's a Palpatine or a Skywalker or a Kenobi or a McGee or whatever she's going to be, like, whatever they decide to do, I think it would have been better if they didn't. That being said, I'm not someone who's going to quibble. I don't think any of us are about how a story is told. I mean, the creators do what they do. But that doesn't mean it's always going to work for us. And I thought I still think that Rey is powerful. I still think that Rey, as you said, Matt, she still makes these choices that define who she is. Clearly, she's not going to want to keep the Palpatine name, but I just don't think we needed Palpatine at all. Now, let's be clear. In Celebration, when Ian McDiarmid came out and we heard the laugh of Palpatine, that was a thrill like no other. That was fantastic. And maybe we should just kind of split this off into Palpatine himself, because I feel like either this was a wasted opportunity or an opportunity that wasn't necessarily something that added to the Skywalker saga, that added to the Star Wars mythology. Because even now, or even if you look at Pablo's book, you know, with the visual guide, we have no indication of what's going on with this guy. Is he a clone? Is he actually Palpatine hooked up on a lot of life support in essence? or what the deal is with that. So I don't know. I just felt like it was something that wasn't really needed in the story. Didn't add to the story. If anything, it was kind of a distraction. Personally, I thought it would have been a lot better if this was about psychology of Kylo Ren and Rey sort of coming to grips with who she is and who she wants to be. That still sort of happened, but the circuitous route that they took didn't necessarily work for me. Which brings me to the next point. And at the end, we can talk about it as anything that we didn't talk about that you guys want to bring up. But the next point I want to bring up is Ben's redemption and death. Now, Matt, there's been a lot of consternation about whether he deserves to be redeemed or not, as well as the fact that he dies at all. Personally, I think this is one of the things that works in the movie. But Matt, what about you?
I always believed when they announced the title of The Rise of Skywalker that that the Skywalker in reference was Ben. Even though he bears Ben Solo, he is Skywalker blood. He is Skywalker lineage. And I felt that they carried that through from the start of start of the sequel trilogy to the conclusion of the sequel trilogy, and that it was Ben who rose. He rose to the occasion. It took him long enough to realize it, but he did finally rise. I see why the scriptwriters and the filmmakers felt that he should die, because it provides a convenient ending, if you will. To set the stage for whatever adventures may come for the sequel trilogy characters. Yet, at the same time, I think Ben should not have actually died. I do believe he should have lived. And in my headcanon, which granted is a scary place to be, he and Rey are on Tatooine training the next generation of Jedi, serving as a sort of yin and yang, a balance between, the dyad, bringing the balance to the Force and teaching the new generation or the next generation how to use not just the light, but the dark without having to have these absolutes, these black and white. And melding, if you will, almost the two schools. He was never a Sith, obviously.
Right.
But he was clearly influenced by Sith lore and Sith teaching. But if you had the two of them together, I think the next crop of Jedi would have been the manifestation of the Force brought into balance, because you would have had real people or real creatures, not just people, exercising their power in the Force, and doing it in a manner much like life itself, full of vagaries and concerns and extreme mood swings from one area to the next. Yet at the same time, utilizing both the light and the dark, find that common ground and that center line, do what's best. Because you don't have evil, good's out of a job. You don't have good, evil's out of a job. And everything's very boring.
Right, you need balance.
Take the two, and you balance it like the scales of yore. And then you go with it. And that's gone. That's gone forever. I didn't think it was the proper way to end the sequel trilogy. And frankly, after having waited since 1977 to see how the Skywalker saga ended, I feel hollow. I'm just like, wait, no. We need a Skywalker and a Solo, even if they're just the service teachers. And we pitch the story forward to the next generation, which I'm all for. But now we only have a Skywalker. That's how I feel about that.
Right. No, I appreciate your honesty, and I think a lot of people will relate to this. Jeff, what about you? I mean, obviously you are probably the biggest Han Solo fan I know. And until Matt said that, I didn't even think about the fact that, gosh, the the Solo line is done. I mean, the Skywalker line is sort of done too, in a way. Gosh, that
they're
really
both
hard.
done.
Yeah.
We assume that Han doesn't have any other illegitimate kids out there, which is a very real possibility. But
shut that mouth right now.
Yeah, I'm not buying that either.
I'm saying he lived a large life before he met Leia. But I didn't have as big of a problem with Kylo Ren dying as Matt did, which is to say I didn't have much of a problem at all. For the simple fact that I don't know that there's a place for him in this world after the horrendous death toll and destruction that Kylo Ren had caused.
Yeah.
At his own hand and by his own command. I don't know if the galaxy could ever see him as anything other than a killer and a dictator. And so I think that was ultimately the way his story had to end. His story was a story of redemption, just like Anakin Skywalker's was through the original trilogy. And I just, like I said, I don't know. I think it would have been very interesting and it would have been very satisfying to see he and Rey end up together, especially since they were the only two characters who understood one another in the entire trilogy.
You mean together as in romantically?
Romantically or otherwise. They clearly there was a connection there, but they were the only two characters who really understood one another at the end of The Last Jedi, and it was set up a really interesting dynamic between ultimate good and ultimate evil being the only two characters that were really connected and really understood one another. So from that standpoint, I think it would have been interesting to see what happens. But again, I think I don't think there's a place for Kylo Ren in this universe, because there's a place for Ben Solo, obviously, but I don't know that the vast majority of people, especially people who lost loved ones to this war, would ever see Ben Solo as anything other than Kylo Ren. So I think ultimately that's the only way his character could have ended.
No, I agree, and I thought it was nice, and a return to sort of the Shakespearean idea of the tragic hero realizes his flaws at the end, and then it's too late, but they die with dignity. And he did. I mean, what he does when he dies is he saves Rey's life. And he absolutely saves her life. Plus, he learns an ability that I'm assuming only someone in the light side of the Force could actually wield, because it involves healing and a selfless act that brings about life instead of death. And it's not about self or power. It's about helping. It's about rising someone, helping someone. And I think that's beautiful. I mean, sure, it would be great to get an animated series or some books or a sequel, but I just don't imagine that Adam Driver would have been up for that. I mean, it doesn't mean he wouldn't be. I just don't know that there's enough story there. We don't need another story about a brave, a mighty Skywalker or Solo dashing around. I mean, we've got that already. Sure, it would be fun, and yes, I understand why people would want it, but I agree with you. There's really not much more place for him in this universe. It was a selfless act, and he needed to find his identity. He finally made peace with who he was. Could have been done a little bit more strongly. I mean, perhaps. I mean, you could possibly say something about Anakin Skywalker too. I mean, really, a lot of the narrative weight is sort of things that we have put together in our heads, and we've connected some dots naturally and organically through the history of the storytelling of Star Wars, and that's okay too. I mean, that's what a myth does at its core, anyway. It gives you a story, but it also allows for you to interpret. And I think that's great. Now, did he deserve to be redeemed? I mean, from a Christian perspective, anybody deserves to be redeemed. Quite honestly, did he do enough? I don't know. Did Darth Vader do enough? I mean, that's a whole other debate as well. But I think it worked in this context, and I thought it was beautiful. And I mentioned this on the review show, but even John Williams takes the Kylo Ren theme and makes it lighter to reflect. We had a great conversation on Twitter today about, Ben wasn't really redeemed. He and Harrison Han Solo didn't forgive him. That was what Ben told himself. Well, maybe, but I believe that then Han Solo loved his son, and I believe he sacrificed himself for his son in hopes of getting him to turn back to the graces of the good side of the Force. And obviously that didn't happen then. It ultimately does happen. and we get this poignant ending, which again I think worked really well. We haven't even talked about the kiss. I don't really know that there's much to say about that. We've talked about that before, but all adds up to a really beautiful ending. But something that wasn't quite as beautiful, and Matt, you alluded to this already, Poe Dameron. So Poe Dameron, thanks to Charles Soule especially, is one heck of a character. And of course, Oscar Isaac is a massive part of that, the biggest part for that. I love Poe in The Force Awakens. I love that, yes, he's very sure of himself, but I never thought of him as cocky. He's a great pilot. He takes some risks, but he ultimately wants the right thing. In The Last Jedi, he means well, but things go bad. And it's a reasonable thing that could happen. And then we get, Resistance Reborn and a lot of different stories that have gone on between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, that year period. There's a lot that can happen there, and a lot that already has in the canonical Star Wars. But in this one, Matt, I felt like he was a completely different character. And I saw someone else say that they thought he was a different character in every film. I think that's fair. I'm not just crazy about, I don't know. I'll put it this way. When I found out that there was going to be a novel about him younger when he was a spy astronaut, I thought, I don't know. Will I read it? I mean, I'm sure I probably will. I've read about everything else. But I feel like Poe was a little bit lost. And I don't feel like if we're going to have these stories in the middle of the movies and we're going to have them connecting, then let's have it make sense where we actually see evolution or progression of the character in some way. And Matt, quite frankly, with Poe Dameron, I don't feel like we got that at all.
My issue with Poe was essentially this. The way we saw him portrayed in The Rise of Skywalker, it completely undid, the events of the final arc of the Poe Dameron comic book series.
I agree.
Because in issue 31, he was there with Black Squadron, and he was finding his footing. He still wrestling internally, with his actions regarding Admiral Holdo. But then, he was able to rally Black Squadron, and I think rediscover within himself his natural leadership and his natural drive to do the right thing. And then of course I read Resistance Reborn, which I really enjoyed a lot. And in that novel, Poe was still wrestling with himself, with his actions, and trying, because he and Rey and everyone else in that novel were having to deal with the awesome, crushing weight of the galaxy, in the face of what were insurmountable odds. And by the time we got to the end of that novel, I felt that he had sort of made his peace with that, and was, come what may, I am ready. And then we get into The Rise of Skywalker, and it transferred a lot of that from the novel into the film. But if you went into The Rise of Skywalker without having read that novel or having read Poe Dameron the comic, I would not be surprised in the least if you were like, wait, what? Who is that? Poe Dameron again? What? And then it took the death of Leia for him to rediscover himself again and rekindle that fire, that self-confidence and that assuredness of, okay, we can do this, we can lead, we may not win, but we will not go down in flames. We will put up a fight. And I found that to be very stirring. But then when, they throw in this, he and Zori ran Spice together. But no, wait a minute. That's what? There's been no mention of that. And I can see perhaps it was done in there because they needed to give a tie-in to Zori. Zori. Zori or Corey? I'm
Zori.
Zori. Okay, I was
Zori.
But and then after, and that took, because I love Poe Dameron. He's my favorite sequel trilogy character. And I love the Poe Dameron comic, as listeners to the show will know and recall. But it just seemed to go against everything that we had known about him. That he was fairly, he liked to buck the system. But that's because he was just, he was so good. He's the Star Wars equivalent of Maverick from Top Gun. whether that's intentional or coincidental, I don't care. But it's not like I could see Maverick, having having sold weed in college before he joined the Navy. But so I'm just kind of curious to see where they're going to go with this, and what impact it's going to have on the character. Whether it's to his detriment or to his benefit that he was a spice runner. I mean, I could see it happening. He's young, he's chafing under his dad's yoke. His mom has passed away. He's rebelling. So he, hey, I'm the best pilot in the galaxy. You know who needs good pilots? Smugglers. So he falls in with, spice runners. And then, then he comes to his senses and he goes, all right, I'm going back home, going to join the New Republic Navy. It's going to be all good. But it was way out of left field for this to come in like that. So.
Yeah. And maybe Leia's the one who pulls him out of the slump. I mean, I guess that we do see how he gets recruited, so maybe not. But I don't know. It's more like whether there's a novel in between or not, is there a logical progression of character from the end of The Last Jedi to the Rise of Skywalker? And maybe there is. I mean, maybe he's so downtrodden from The Last Jedi that in the Rise of Skywalker, maybe he will be a little bit like that.
There was, but you had to have read Resistance Reborn to see it.
Yeah.
Without having read that novel, I think the gap may have just been too wide for the casual viewer.
That's what I mean. And like you said, in the novel, it feels like he made peace with it. And all of a sudden, in the story, that sort of is gone. I feel like that's kind of gone. And for all the ballyhoo thing about the three of them being together again, Rey, Finn, and Poe, and actually spending some screen time together, really besides some banter early on after Poe does a good job of wrecking up the Falcon, they really don't interact at all. And that's a bit of a misstep too.
Yeah.
Jeff, anything for you on Poe?
What was the question?
How do you feel about Poe, his arc, his place in the story?
I'm just being a jack wagon. I'm like Matt. Poe was my favorite character from the sequel trilogy, and that is down to nothing other than Oscar Isaac's performance. Because the writers did him no favors. He was supposed to be the Han Solo of this trilogy, and it felt like they just never knew what to do with him. It was almost like his storylines were an afterthought. And that's fine if you want to focus on Rey and to a lesser extent Finn as the secondary lead. That kind of does leave Poe out in the cold. But much like everything else in The Rise of Skywalker, it felt like we're still getting new information about this character. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it felt like it was nothing but new information. We weren't seeing this character progress until Leia dies and he decides it's time to grow up and be a leader. But that was all told to us. We didn't see any of that in his character. And again, finding out these new layers to him didn't add much to his character because we never had time to spend with him. He seemed to be pretty much the same character at the end of the film as he was at the beginning of The Rise of Skywalker, or The Force Awakens. The only exception being he's still trying to hook up with Zora.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It felt like they were trying to make him a character that he didn't want to be.
Or that he wasn't. He wasn't in the other two films. I just felt like it was the biggest misstep in characterization, which I'm not used to in Star Wars. I mean, these characters are not perfect, and that's fine. I mean, we love them. But at least they're pretty similar, as far as how they are, who they are in each film. And in Poe was quite a bit different. So that's something that is still kind of a challenge for me. And I don't know if I'm ever going to make peace with that. And really, you shouldn't have to do that much work after the movie's done to kind of make your peace with that. But, we will certainly discuss it a lot. Let's go ahead and take a break. Speaking of that, Tom's going to have some news when we come back. Matt, Jeff, and I will talk a little bit more about The Rise of Skywalker, what worked, and what we're still sort of marinating on. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Rise of the Resistance is now open on both coasts, Walt Disney World and Disneyland. So you need to be sure and book some experiences to the East and West Coast so you can experience Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, and Rise of the Resistance. And I can think of no better way to do that than through MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Their signature service and expert advice will help clients maximize their vacation time and dollar. Their no cost, no obligation quote when you use the service is really wonderful, and they also proactively adjust the booking if the rate goes down. They will help your family enjoy everything Galaxy's Edge and the Disney theme parks and the cruise lines have to offer, help plan every detail, and will share invaluable tips. Be sure to go to our affiliate link, which can be found in the show notes on the front of our webpage or on our social media, and sign up for a free, no obligation quote. You'll have the best vacation possible and help out Coffee with Kenobi in the process. So be sure to tell them that Dan Z and Coffee with Kenobi sent you. I would love to take this opportunity to thank our CWK Patreon contributors: Jason Hall, Dennis Keithley, Colby Mead, Jessica Berry, Adam Bankhurst, David Nicely, Jeff Ellis, Ross Halliban, Frank Mulder, Alexander Moylan, Aaron Harris, Chris Skavarka, Angela Sauce, Susan Gray, Connie Shee, Tyler Pompa, Hannah, Yancey Evans, Alex Procasio, Ian Thompson, Simbat Detradarian, Christine Turk, Sean Reed, Kurt McKillen, Dan Ream, Brian Harding, Blake Weaver, Jim Capron, Caroline Maselli, Chris Metz, LJ Souter, Thea Selby, Daz Davies, Christian Dale, Brian McKinney, Jared Cantor, BJ Smith, Eric Struthers, Nick Deco, and Mark Suter. As a Coffee with Kenobi Patreon contributor, you help out our show in so many ways. The web hosting, the fees that go into it, upgrading our equipment, the travel, the things that we need to do to cover the different events. It all is because of your Patreon contributions and generosity. But you also get something out of it as well. For $5 or more a month, you get access to CWK Pour-Over, which is our weekly podcast not heard anywhere else, hosted by myself, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. And for $10 or more a month, you get access to CWK Lens for behind-the-scenes video and images as well. So if you're curious about this and want to find out more, go to www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi and check out all the things we offer. And be sure to ask me any questions that you have. We'd love to have you support and be a part of our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon family. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for your consideration.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
Oh, wait. This is interesting.
You found something.
I'm about to let everyone in on the secret.
It's time for some Coffee with Kenobi Star Wars news. And we don't really have we've got that fun little slogan musical intro at the beginning that Corey made years and years ago, but we don't really have here's Tommy, something like that. We have to come up with something like that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be great. I think after a little bit of time, maybe we need a little intro, a news do 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 do, and then Star Wars. Yeah, all right, news.
Wouldn't that be fun? Interesting. Well, this is Tom Gross, for those of you who weren't aware. I'm sure you already are, but Tom, you've got some Star Wars news to share with us.
I do, and I promise I won't sing during any of the newscasts. Well, it was announced this week that Hasbro will be releasing a new toy vehicle in its vintage line. The Imperial Troop Transport was first released without any screen footage back in 1979, but since then it's had its first screen action in The Mandalorian, of course, and it was also seen many times on Lothal in the animated series Rebels. Now that it has screen time, it's time for a revival. The Imperial Troop Transport will be released this spring with a retail price of $69.99, and the Vintage Line Edition has a similar exterior look with the exterior troop compartments on the sides, front cockpit doors that open, and you can put a action figure inside, a rotating turret on the top. But unlike the 1979 version, the back opens to a troop compartment complete with fold-down seats and weapons compartment. The Vintage Collection vehicle certainly holds a more realistic look than the original toy.
Yeah, so when this was sent to me by Hasbro, I ran and talked to you about it, And you told me a little nugget that I'm just so incredibly envious of, and share that with our friends.
Oh, yes. I have one of these. I remember getting it as a child, of course, and I remember playing with it, but always thinking, I don't even know if this is Star Wars. I mean, it said it's Star Wars, but I've never seen this before. And so, what's interesting about it is it does not have a lot of play hours to it. So it's in pretty good condition, except for the stickers over the years have peeled up a little bit. So, I may have to pull that out and do a little CWK office pick with the original Imperial Troop Transport. And looking at the pictures of the vintage line has a much more realistic look to it, whereas the old original 1979 Transport has, more of a toy look to it. So
yeah, that's a good just comparison.
Yeah, but it definitely looks very cool, and it's very vintage in the toy line, but new with the on-screen feel. So it's a fun piece to have, and definitely will be a unique piece to any collection.
I wish it looked more like the original. Of course, because I never got the original one, and I always thought it was cool. Because it supposedly had sound effects, and I doubt it was realistic to the movies. But when I was a kid, I'm sure I would have noticed, but it wouldn't have bothered me because it would have been neat. I mean, the Falcon and the X-Wing from Kenner, those don't have really the same sounds as the movie, but they're still fun. They're classic in their own way. And I'm pretty sure that Dave took some of the sound effects from the original toys and put them into the Ghost sound effects when it was firing the cannons.
Yes.
That sounds right, doesn't it? I think it is. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. And people could probably correct me on this if I'm wrong, but if I recall correctly, on the Troop Transport, you had like a running engine sound, and you also had the turret firing sound. But I may never know, because if I recall correctly, the batteries sat in that for probably all the way through my college years. And, you took a old butter knife to dig it out of there with all the corrosion and everything. Yeah. So I don't know that the battery compartment still works. And I don't know that I'd ever get sounds out of that anymore. But the rest of it looks...
try.
Yeah. Oh, I will. Yeah. I'm actually thinking a nice CWK office pick with the Troop Transport right next to my AT-AT. So that'll be very cool.
That would be amazing. And you've got a lot of great classic stuff. I did order this, by the way.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I clicked on it, and it was already sold out on Amazon. I mean, it's all pre-order, but it was sold out there. It was closed on Best Buy, a couple places, but I finally found it on a Big Bad Toy Store and pre-ordered it. So,
nice.
I actually kind of pre-ordered before I looked at it fully, but I'm still happy I got it. I mean, I loved seeing it in The Mandalorian, and it does show up in season 4 of Rebels too.
Yes, it does. So I'm just curious. The research that I got for my story said that it just had a general spring release. When you ordered it, did it give you a date?
I thought it said March.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing an actual date.
Sooner than later, then. That's cool.
It's pretty cool.
I look forward to seeing that when it comes in.
Oh, for sure.
So, speaking of The Mandalorian, how about the announcement that came out this week on StarWars.com that Bob Iger made Season 2 of The Mandalorian official during an earnings call with stockholders. So the second season of The Mandalorian now is official to be released in October of 2020.
So it's great, right? And also they also said that he's planning on having some characters perhaps spinning off under their own thing from the world of The Mandalorian too.
Yes. So I'm excited about that. And one thing that I thought of timing wise, it's nice because you have a lot of people coming up with renewals for Disney Plus at that time. Well, not quite at that time, but by the time the season is about mid-season to wrapping up, there'll be a number of people, because it came out in November. So yes, actually just about 3 or 4 episodes in, you'll be wanting to renew your Disney Plus subscription. So I'm sure that's not accidental, but you know what? Who wasn't? I mean, who's not thinking about renewing?
Well, that's an astute observation. Very savvy. That's got to be some pearls in that, I would say. And gosh, I mean, obviously we're gonna keep Disney Plus for as long as Disney Plus wants to keep us.
Indeed.
So it's great. And like I said this on this week's Looking at Lucasfilm, But as far as spin-offs go, as long as they still, spin-off, give us more stuff, that's great. But still keep these characters around in the world of The Mandalorian too, just because of the chemistry, and they all bring out the best in one another. So I hope we kind of get the best of both worlds there.
I would completely agree. So, but it's nice to get the official from the top guy.
That's right.
That work, because we got. I believe, didn't Favreau on the last episode give us a tease on Twitter about season 2?
Yeah,
so,
I showed a slim Gamorrean guard.
That's right. And so, I usually consider that to be the top guy, but this is the guy that writes the checks. So
yeah, he's the top. He's the top. The top.
All right. Well, speaking of top of the top, how about some top toys here? The Lego Ideas blog released the results of the fan voting for the next Star Wars Ultimate Collector Series set. The Republic gunship, the LATTI Beatout EF-76 Nebulan B escort frigate. Doggone it, I was really thinking I was going to get through that without stumbling. It beat out that and the TIE bomber. So the gunship got over 50% of the votes from fans to be the next UCS. The blog reports that it can't currently reveal any details, but the gunship will be the next UCS Star Wars set.
So this is really, really cool. Do you have any idea what some of the previous sets were?
Yeah, let's see. Going back most recently, the Imperial Star Destroyer was in 2019. The year before that was the Y-Wing Starfighter. Then 2017 had 2 of them, Snowspeeder and Millennium Falcon. So there's that one. And then just as I'm looking through the list, it goes clear back to 2000. And so I'm just going to give you a sampling of some of these. I see a couple of Death Stars, a Cloud City, General Grievous, Tantive 4. So a whole bunch of cool things. Ewok Village. They also have UCS for the Marvel Shield helicarrier.
Wow.
And a DC Batmobile, and looks like the Batmobile is the main subject of, they got about 4 different ones of those. So some really cool sets. And I know I've seen a few of these in person, and they are detailed. I saw one of the Falcon sets just recently, and I mean, the top just comes apart and shows all the inside of the Falcon in detail. They're really cool. They're really cool sets. They're probably more advanced than what I would like to take the time to put together. But the people who love Legos and love Star Wars, this is their jam. And
yeah, it's perfect. It's like peanut butter and chocolate.
It is. And when I think about the Rebel gunship, there's got to be a lot of the thing that Lego people love are unique pieces, one-of-a-kind pieces. And I would sure think the Republic gunship would probably have a lot of those with its curvature and unique gun, that dome in the bottom of it that shoots that laser out. So anyway, I think it'd be a really cool ship, and I can't wait to see one put together. Well, while I was doing a little research today, I thought I'd share that I discovered a nice little article on StarWars.com that I think everyone should check out. Now that most of us have taken the time to sit back and relax from our viewings of the Rise of Skywalker and reflect a little bit, this article is a nice piece to do that reflection with, because it covers the major themes of the film as a conclusion to the narrative. And this article just happens to be written by, you, Mr. Dan Zare. So tell us a little bit about how this article came about and where some of your thoughts came from.
Sure. Well, Lucasfilm asked me to write a piece about themes and connecting sort of what happened in The Rise of Skywalker to previous Star Wars Skywalker films, which I was more than happy to do, of course. And it was cool because I had talked about themes in the earlier films as well. So I just kind of sat down and made a list of where I thought the main story arcs were and kind of what was going on behind the scenes, the thematic elements and the mythological connections. And then it kind of wrote itself. It was great fun to write, and it's really a thrill it's always a thrill to see something you write on stars.com. And I can't remember, did I even tell you that this was happening? I completely forgot.
No, I didn't. I literally was doing a little research for news tonight, and I came across that article, and I took a look at who the author was. I'm like, oh, well, I know that guy.
Did you laugh?
I did, out loud, just like I just did right now.
I love it.
But no, that was great. it's always fun to come across something that you've written for StarWars.com, whether I know it's there or not. And of course, I enjoyed reading it. And I actually heard some feedback from some people on it, and they really enjoyed it as well. So,
oh wow, well, thank you.
So that's good. Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Well, I guess to conclude tonight's news, I wanted to take a moment to remember Alan Harris, who we remember as playing the Trandoshan bounty hunter Bosk in Empire Strikes Back. But he also played many other minor roles through the Star Wars universe, and I believe I saw that he was also the first to screen test the original white Boba Fett Mandalore armor. So a film is only as strong as its smallest parts, and it's people like Alan Harris who made Star Wars what it is today. Alan Harris was 81 years old.
Yeah, definitely rest in peace. He did a lot of, as you said, a lot of work and some stand-in stuff, and he was a mainstay at conventions. And James Burns, who I trust, of course, is a good friend of the show from Jedi News. He spoke very highly of him as well. So he definitely thoughts and prayers to him and his family.
Indeed.
There's quite a bit more than I think we initially thought. So thank you so much, of course, for bringing us the latest Star Wars news.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
We are back, and I originally said that I had 7 or 8 points, but honestly, we've really broken down the original one. So I'm just going to take the last 2 in the interest of time and bring them up. We talked about Poe before the break, and now I want to talk about Finn. And I'll just kind of get my thoughts on Finn out there, and then Matt and Jeff want to hear what you two think. For me, Finn is a fascinating character. I like the fact that he was a stormtrooper. He was very much deciding what he wanted to do. In the second film, he wasn't really sure, but he cared about his friends, and he wanted them safe. And yes, the conflict, he wanted to stop the First Order, but he was more interested in his friends. At the end, he starts to make a sacrifice. Rose saves him. And then he starts to live for something else. And it was great. In this, his relationship with Rose pretty much is non-existent, a friendship or otherwise. And then his feelings for Rey, whatever they may be, romantic, friendly, brother, sister, whatever the case may be, he mentions he's got to tell her something, which probably was that he was force sensitive, I would guess. It's just never addressed.
It has to be it.
What's that?
That has to be it.
It has to be. Yeah, I agree. But the fact that not only does he have a friendship with the Rose thing is non-existent, the Rey thing is just never addressed, and not an ambiguous, fun Star Wars way where we know there are other things that happen. You know about the Clone Wars. Yes, I was once a Jedi Knight, same as your father. All right. Eventually, we find out quite a bit about the Clone Wars, more than we ever dreamed. But it wasn't like it was just thrown out there for no reason and never brought up again. There's a lot of stuff with Finn that doesn't happen. In fact, I would say he doesn't have an arc at all in this film, besides running around and yelling his friends' names. And then at the end, it's over, and he's a good guy, and we like him, and he's heroic, and that's all great. But there's really not an arc to this character at all. Matt, you are certainly an expert in story and storytelling. What do you think about that notion that Finn may not have an arc in this movie?
I kind of disagree with that notion, actually.
Oh, good.
Because, in The Force Awakens, we're introduced to Finn, and all he wants to do is get away. Go into The Last Jedi, he still wants to get away. He wants, let's bolt to wild space. Let's get as far away as possible. Get to the Rise of Skywalker, and to me, Finn found his footing. He realized, he accepted, this is my family. This is where I belong. I have my dearest friends. I have Rey. I have Poe. Or I have Poe, then I have Rey. And he stepped up and became a leader. That he was willing to go into the fight, to do what was right. And I think that was very clearly exemplified, when they went to the Forest Moon, and where he encountered Janna and the other former First Order stormtroopers who had mutinied, and he showed his pervasive willingness to die for his family, by chasing after Rey, when she went to the ruins, to the remnants of the Death Star, He wanted to save her. He willingly, served as the, that assault boat team leader when they were trying to knock out the transmitter on Exegol, to stop the final order from actually happening. And I think he had made peace with himself and his place in the galaxy. He was no longer just FN2187. He was no longer Finn, but he was Finn of the Resistance. He was Finn of the family. So I really liked how Finn portrayed, because I felt I got to know him better as a character in the Rise of Skywalker, and that's one of the high points for me for that movie.
But don't you think he's pretty much the same at the end as he was in the beginning? Because all those wonderful points you mentioned, that's how he is from the beginning of the film, and that's how he is at the end. He doesn't really go through any kind of internal struggle.
I think I think he does go through some internal struggle, because he's Poe appoints him co-general, and that right there is, it's a major acknowledgement of how far Finn has come and how well Finn has grown within himself and with being comfortable inside himself.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I do have to chime in as well with regarding to what he was trying to tell Rey, when they were sinking into the quicksand. And just on the side, when I was young in the 80s, I thought quicksand was going to be a very real problem in my life. And
thanks to the A-Team and Magnum PI and things like that.
But I think what he was going to tell Rey was not "I love you" or anything like that, but it was, "I feel the Force." That he's forced to. And I think, but here's the thing: is I think Rey knows that. I think it's sort of, she's already inferred that, despite his level best attempts not to imply it. But whether or not something happens with that, who knows? Again, in my head canon, where Ben Solo is still dead, I see Rey training Finn, and the two of them going out into the galaxy and training others, to be the next generation of Jedi Knights. So, but except, I see Finn still using not just a lightsaber, but also a blaster.
So real quickly, would you have been just as fine with Finn if he wasn't Force sensitive, or do you feel like they needed to add that to his character?
I don't think they needed to add it to his character. To me, it was a bonus, and that's one thing that kind of I found fascinating. In the external debate that erupted after the film was released, on social media, was it seemed to me that a lot of people had overlooked the fact that just because Luke Skywalker shut himself off from the Force and went to Ahch-To, just because Snoke, and by extension Palpatine, destroyed Luke's Jedi Academy, it didn't mean that the Force itself had been snuffed out in the galaxy.
Right.
That energy field that binds us together, could not be stamped out. It's the very underlying fabric of the Star Wars universe. And there's no way that it was going to stay out of commission just because Luke left. Much like, I think we see now in some of the peripheral stories that are being told in other media, set in the events between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, that the Force was still alive and well, and that there were people who were tapping into it, who were aware of it. Now, granted, as has been made clear throughout the sequel trilogy era, the Force was just a legend, and of course, in the aftermath of the prequel trilogy, the Jedi became mythical, stories told at night. But at no point ever do I believe that the Force ever actually go away, and that's why we have Force sensitive, like the young boy with the broom at the end of The Last Jedi, with Ben, I was having a conversation with somebody at work about this. They said, well, the First Order, they would be looking for Force sensitive. I'm like, no, they wouldn't be, because as far as they were concerned, the Force was gone. The Jedi were dead. All they were worried about was one Jedi, and they couldn't find him.
Yeah.
So they had no, it's not like they were actively recruiting or seeking out Force sensitives. And the last, that it didn't even occur to them that that they had Force sensitives within their own ranks. And some of them were probably, there had to be some sort of catalyst. It's like, in the old Marvel Comics era, from the Bronze Age, in the 70s and 80s, when you had mutants who were first discovering their powers, it usually took some sort of catalyst for their powers come out. Like with Rogue, it was, getting a kiss, and then she, almost killed the kid who was kissing her. For others, it was just some traumatic event, and then, that caused them to manifest their powers. And I think Ben, his temerity to leave the First Order behind awakened within him the Force. You could say the Force awakened within Ben. So.
Wow. Well, that was good. I'm interested to see what you think about that too, Jeff, because I know, obviously you like, I know you're a big Poe guy, but you like Finn as well.
I do like Finn, and man,
are you on teams there or team more on this one?
I'm sort of team Jeff, because
that's good.
The poor guy just could not kill himself. He kept trying, and nobody would let him. And that was a bit of a problem for me in The Force Awakens, in The Rise of Skywalker, because at the end of The Last Jedi, Rose makes a point to him: we don't win by killing what we hate; it's by saving what we love.
Right.
So she stops him from trying to sacrifice himself. Same exact thing happens in The Rise of Skywalker, and instead of trying to stop him, I can't think of the character's name, the new character that he met on the Forest Moon.
Jannah
says, okay, I'm going with you. So J.J. Abrams is the worst yes-ander in the history of improv, because he took everything that Rian Johnson set up, and instead of saying yes and this and building on it, he said no, but, and went the completely opposite direction with it. And from a storytelling perspective, it really bothered me. However, that being said, I think Finn did grow through the course of the series, because when we first meet him in The Force Awakens, again, he's a deserter. He's just trying to get away. He's trying to look out for himself. And at the end, he really is. It is a different form of sacrifice that he's trying to perform at the end of Rise of Skywalker than in The Last Jedi. So I will give them a little credit for that. But he has grown into a leader. He understands what sacrifice is. He understands what needs to be done. And I love the idea of him being Force sensitive and figuring it out. I hate that it was yet another dropped plot thread. Much like with Poe, we get all of these really interesting character developments, and nothing happens with them. Why did we not ever see him tell Rey, I'm Force sensitive? They're just dropping it. This whole movie felt like a setup for an entire expanded universe, and that was the biggest problem for me. And it was no more evident than with Finn's character.
No,
because
I agree.
We have a lot of setup, but no payoff. And
go
ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, no, I was nearing the end of it. I just I do feel like he did progress over the course of the trilogy, and I think the Finn that we have at the end of The Rise of Skywalker is a completely different person than the Finn that we meet at the beginning of The Force Awakens. And I thought John Boyega, of course, is a wonderful actor, and I thought he did a remarkable job with the role.
He's great. And to be clear, my point was always in this movie, not over the overall series. He does grow in this series, but I think in this one he's the most stagnant. And really, I mean, to be fair, Han Solo's pretty stagnant in Return of the Jedi. I mean, his major growth comes in The Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
So, I mean, I could see that, but I agree that it is a dropped thread that we don't get really much about Finn. I mean, and I have a hard time believing that JJ or Kathleen Kennedy or Lucasfilm was thinking, no, we'll say this for the books. I think when they're making these movies, they're all about the movies. I think the creators of the books and the comics find things to tell stories about. But I don't believe for a second that they're making these movies with the intent of telling other stories later. I think it's just a fortuitous and good storytelling from all the great creatives that contribute to the Star Wars universe and from the place of fiction.
And I would believe that if I didn't have evidence of J.J. Abrams being able to tell far more coherent stories in other films.
Exactly. Yeah, I've always said that I think this is the least JJ of all of his movies. So again, it sounds like I don't like it. I do like it. But
I will go back to this movie more than I do any of the prequels. I will say that.
Oh, I don't think I will. And we'll see how it ages. I mean, my stance is certainly softened on I've always liked episodes 1 and 2, and I think I've liked them more as time has gone on because of the way they've aged, because of the way my students have liked them, the way that my children like them. My son Mason does not like The Rise of Skywalker because he thinks the Emperor is scary. Now Mason is 6. The Emperor is scary. So it'll be interesting to see how that movie ages around this house, but I'm sure in time that won't even be a blip on his radar, of course. But there's more points we could talk about. I think we've certainly got a lot of material here to go on and on, but there's only so much time in the day, and our coffee's getting low, and you two have got other starships to fly around the galaxy, including your wonderful podcast, the Star Wars Splash Page, which is blowing up the charts, gentlemen. It's great fun to watch. I reached out to both of you. You breaking down Star Wars #1 and the Rise of Kylo Ren has really been sort of transcendent for me and helped me to kind of look at these books a little bit differently. So I thank you for that. And that's the great stuff that you have going on each and every week on your wonderful podcast. So Matt and Jeff, tell us about that and let us know where we can find not only the show, but both of you as well. So Matt, let's start with you.
You can find Star Wars Splash Page on Twitter and Facebook at SW Splash Page Pod. You can also find us on the web at Star Wars Splash Play.
StarWarsSplashPage.com. Took care of that for you, Matt.
That one, yeah.
And then, of course, you can find me on Twitter at Gorilla Scribe, and that's with 2 R's and 2 L's, proper way to spell. And feel free to say hi either way. But then, of course, you can find our podcast typically, usually every Wednesday. Maybe it might be on Thursday, but we're trying to do same day and date when the comics come out, but albeit later in the day. And so far, it's been working out pretty well. And with this new second phase of Marvel's Star Wars comics taking flight, we've got some pretty good storytelling already happening. And I will say this for people, check out Darth Vader #1 this week because it's wow. If you are a fan of the prequel trilogy and Padme Amidala in particular, you are going to be very, very happy.
There is a good tease right there. Jeff, tell us about where they can find you, and if you want to add anything to your Star Wars Splash Page. And, of course, you've got Marvin Dog Media, which you haven't mentioned yet on the show. That's kind of a record.
I know. I to be honest, I couldn't figure out a way to shoehorn it in. It's all part of my my goal to start getting everyone else to promote my stuff instead of me. No, but as Matt said, Star Wars Splash Page. We've been trying to get it out on Wednesdays, and again, sometimes it's Thursdays, just depending on life gets in the way. But it does come out weekly, even if there are no books to discuss. I don't know if you can hear my dog sneezing next to me. Even if there are no books to discuss, we have something to say. So you can always find us there. You can find me on Twitter at the Jeff McGee or at Marvin Dog Media, all one word. I'm just waiting for Margot to stop. Can you hear her?
Yes, that's okay. It's kind of cute.
Yeah. You'll have to excuse Margot. She my dog has allergies. I have the broken dog. But as I said, you can find Marvin Dog Media on Twitter. You can find Facebook pages for all of the Marvin Dog Media shows, Talking Toys with Taylor and Jeff, and the Saturday Morning Supercast are our 2 shows we have running currently. But I'll announce it here. We are very close to relaunching the pilot episode. Very excited about that.
Great.
It is impending. It'll be probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks. We'll have that out again. And that, for anyone who doesn't know, that is a discussion of television history, really. We take the first episode of a different television series and discuss how it set up the series it was to follow, how things changed, and just how it works as a standalone episode. I have a lot of fun with that. We have a new Corey and I have a new co-host, Regina Davis, on that show that I'll announce it here. And that'll be coming out in the next, again, 4 to 6 weeks. Really excited about that. And you can find all of those on just look up the name of the show on Facebook and you'll find it. And other than that, I think that's all I had to promote right now.
You better get Tails Gold Monkey on that show then.
Oh, yeah. We're working on it.
I remember that so well. Wow, that's great. And thank you for sharing that major announcement on the show. I can't wait to spread the word with everybody else. So, guys, thank you again so much for coming back on Coffee with Kenobi.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, yeah, thank you for having us. We're always happy to come back.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is...
As we close out the show, I want to thank our CWK sponsors, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel and One Nation Coffee. Please support them the way they support our podcast. And remember to listen to new and archived shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, CastBox, Deezer, and our website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com, or wherever you enjoy listening to your favorite shows. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. You can also find us on social media. In fact, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram, give us a like on Facebook, and check us out on Pinterest. In addition to the places I just mentioned for Coffee with Kenobi, you can find me twice a month on the podcast Looking at Lucasfilm, part of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, as well as on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. You can find my writings on CWK's website, as well as StarWars.com and IGN, where I contribute articles on Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. Don't forget to check out www.patreon.com/coffeewithkenobi to support our podcast and help us keep the lights on here in the Coffee with Kenobi studios. Our Patreon page is where you can listen to our exclusive weekly podcast, CWK Pour-Over, hosted by me, CWK newsman Tom Gross, and Coffee with Kenobi co-founder Corey Clubb for just $5 a month. There are also options for behind-the-scenes videos, photos, t-shirts, and more. Plus, 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital each month. Thank you to all of you who are currently supporting us on Patreon, and thank you for considering becoming a member of our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon family. And if you are considering starting a podcast or blog, let me know how I can help you get started and help you make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out my all-new venture, danzmedia.com, and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization, talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. That's going to do it for show number 321 of Coffee with Kenobi. I want to thank Matt Moore and Jeff McGee for joining me this week to talk about the Rise of Skywalker. Where do you sit on the Rise of Skywalker? How do you feel about this movie? Has it aged well for you in this month and a few weeks here or there? Or is it something where you're still not even sure just yet and you need to watch it in the comfort of your own home? I can certainly understand that as well. Look, next week we're going to start talking about the Clone Wars. We're not going to forget about the Rise of Skywalker. We've got an entire summer to do that. But we want to get back to the Clone Wars because, of course, that series is coming back, which is wonderful. Maybe we'll do a retrospective next week, get hyped for the new season. Let me know what you want to talk about on the Clone Wars. Also, we've got a big thing coming very, very soon. I'm sure you saw on social media and on our Patreon page that we are going to do a Facebook group of Coffee with Kenobi. It's much more active community-wise, and I think it's going to give us more opportunities to talk. I mean, the Facebook page is great. Twitter is great. Instagram is great, but they are not as streamlined as using a Facebook group. We've got some ideas about what we want to call those. Be sure to go to Facebook and check those out. In fact, I will just share with you right now some of the top ones that we have. It seems like the top one really is Cafe Kenobi. We've got some ones for Cafe Obi-Wan, Kenobi Coffee Cantina, Kenobi's Cantina, Club Obi-Wan, all kinds of them. Gwyneth Mullins even offered Obi-Wan Kenobucks. That might be a mouthful, but it looks like Cafe Kenobi is very much in the lead. So go ahead and check that out and see which one you think would sound the coolest. We're also open to other ideas, but we want to have a group where people can interact a lot more freely. I mean, even for me to read to you on our Facebook page, it took me a while to kind of hunt around and to look at the comments, but on the Facebook groups, it's just a lot easier. So I'm going to stop babbling about that because we need to launch this thing. Again, let me know which one you think would be a good name. Let's try to pick a date to launch this thing. I'll tell you what, let me pull up the calendar here. Of course, we've got Valentine's Day this week. Now, how about February 10th will be the launch of our Facebook group. So, yeah, you've got a couple of days to vote. Let me know which one you think would be best. In the meantime, be sure to check out everything Coffee with Kenobi has to offer. As I said earlier, have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm. And remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.